Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a mock draft 3.0. The post combine, it's going to be a full 7 round draft with a trade that I'll talk about in a sec. But how about this year's combine, man? It was really great to watch. I think as a group, as a whole, the most athletic prospects we've ever seen. Had some great individual performances. Sonny Styles, and how about Eli Stowers going in there and breaking a couple records? A lot of people thought Kenyon Sadiq was the set in stone most athletic tight end, and I mean he had a great combine himself, but Eli Stowers gave him a run for his money. The running back from Arkansas as well, Brennan Thompson, of course, a speedster, and another guy, Malachi Lawrence, who I've talked about many times now. He was probably the biggest combine riser. I think he ran a 4.53. As you know, he's like 6'5", 250. Man, he was, yeah, I think he's probably one of the biggest risers out of anybody. Um, Without further ado, though, let's hop into this mock draft. Of course, randomness is going to be very low, and it's going to be drafting for needs more than positional value, although there's still an emphasis on positional value. Now, this is the one trade we're going to make for this video, and I will explain it. And it's going to be Mac Jones for a second round pick, mid second round pick, ironically the 49th overall pick. Some fans might not think we should trade Mac Jones, keep him because he was very valuable. He showed how valuable backup quarterbacks can be. And if we keep him, we can get a third round compensation pick next year. Some fans might not think that we can even get a second round pick. Um, in terms of that, though, in terms of the view of the Minnesota Vikings, they've made it very clear that they're not willing to see through, at least in the short term, JJ McCarthy. They don't have that confidence in him right now. And the Minnesota Vikings have, a couple options. Malik Willis, potentially. And you could go in the draft as well. But I think teams are they're not going to overlook, these resurrection prospects that have occurred. I mean, Sam Darnold was a big case. He went over to the 49ers, and it's not like Sam Darnold got a ton of playing time, but just being in that system, that Shanahan system, learning and applying that to, when he was on the Vikings and now the Seattle Seahawks. Um, that was a reclamation project, and I think front offices are going to look at that. And again, I don't think they'll overlook it. And in terms of Mac Jones, he got more playing time than Sam Darnold. You could potentially argue that, Mac Jones is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold in the right system. I don't know how far fetched of an idea that is. Um, I have seen that discourse being floated around. But, there was a lot of discourse in terms of 49ers fans about Mac Jones being better than Brock Purdy or just being able to do what Brock Purdy does and whether Brock Purdy's contract is worth it. I hold the view that he was worth the money in the long term. However, I completely understand the argument. Mac Jones came in 5, 6 games. He managed these games, played very solid. I mean, that Rams primetime game was probably one of my favorite as a fan to watch. Just how he got battered and came out, came back in, was puking on the sidelines, and he showed why he, was drafted where he was all those years ago. Obviously a Pro Bowler a couple of years ago, and I think at the very least we could certainly get a third round pick for him. At that point, I think we keep him and wait till next year. But if we do get a second round pick, I think we bite the bullet because I really do like this draft, especially that middle second round. There are a lot of solid prospects, and I'll kind of identify those later as we get on. But without further ado, let's start the draft and let's kind of see how the board falls to pick 27. Um, okay, so first things first, I don't think Vega Ione will fall. I do want to take that into consideration. I do want this to be a realistic mock draft. I don't think Vega Ione will fall. I think I could see him going to the Chargers or the Baltimore Ravens, also potentially the Detroit Lions. Kenyon Sadiq, same thing. I don't think he'll last to pick 27. Same thing with Peter Woods. All very solid prospects. If Vega Ione was on the board, I would absolutely take him. Um, Same thing with Akeem Mesidor. I've mocked him in my previous videos. Akeem Mesidor and Emmanuel McNeil Warren are my two preferred players to draft at pick number 27. However, Mesidor, it seems like people are taking notice. Caden Proctor is a realistic target I think we could draft. And looking at his metrics, he is a solid player. It's just I think he's an inconsistent tackle. Certainly has a great size to him, 6'7", 366. And again, all these metrics are top percentile. At the same time, though, we had that recent news with Trent Williams, and that is worrying about him potentially not coming back. I think he will, though. And assuming that he does, I don't want to take a more or less inconsistent, albeit good tackle at pick 27 to wait for a year. And that kind of sounds counterintuitive because, he could develop under Trent. Um, I just hold the view, though, that we really do need to take a wide receiver. I think wide receiver and safety are our biggest needs. Um, and kind of it's interesting, too. Going into February, there were the three set in stone wide receivers who are always going to go in the first round, and that's, Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, and Jordan Tyson. Jordan Tyson's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit. He's certainly still going to be a first rounder. But now, Denzel Boston is more than likely going to be a first round guy. Casey Conception is going to be, I think, a first round guy. And same with Omar Cooper. Daniel Jeremiah recently made him a top 20 on his big board. So it went from three wide receivers in the first round to potentially six. There's one guy here, though, that I hadn't come around on until recently, and it's Casey Conception. He will be the pick. I do want to give some reasoning, though. I wasn't high on Casey Conception because I thought he was a gadget guy, honestly, and I thought he was a little bit smaller than he was, but, when he measured in at the combine, he was 5'11" and I believe 6'8". So he's pretty much 6 feet, 190. I mean, solid size for a wide receiver. Certainly not undersized. And Casey Conception is a different archetype from some of these other guys, specifically like Chris Bell and Omar Cooper. While someone like Omar Cooper, again, great metrics from him as well, but while Omar Cooper gives you that physical yak toughness, kind of like the Debo Samuel, even though I hate using that comparison, and guys like Denzel Boston, who goes a little bit earlier, as well as Chris Bell, offer you like the size profiles, 6'2", and I think Boston is 6'3" or 6'4". Conception really stresses out defenses, you know what I mean? And I totally thought he was a gadget guy, but looking at like the metrics, he only has 11 screen catches. Um, and looking at the tape, I mean, he has elite short area twitch, specifically on those like short drag routes. I think he can like really easily manipulate corners as well, and he's very versatile. Like you look at him lining up in the slot, 136 slot snaps versus 258 out wide. He can align in the slot. He can motion to the backfield. He could play a jet sweep role as well. Very versatile. And another add-on too is he is immediate special teams value. I mean, this guy returned 2 punts last year to the house. Maybe there's a world where we don't re-sign Sky Moore and he can kind of come back in. Of course, he played against great Power 5 competition, as you guys can see on the right. Um, and I think one thing too nowadays in this day and age and in today's NFL is that separation wins more consistently than jump balls. And if you guys didn't see this Casey Conception straight line drill, essentially what this drill is, if you're not sure, is they put you at the 50-yard line and you catch a ball, you turn around, catch another ball, and then you run down the 50-yard line and you catch 5 balls. Uh, you catch one from one side, one from the other, turn around, you know what I mean? And the goal is to just stay on the line and be as straight and balanced as you can. And Casey Conception ran that drill beautifully. He ran it better than anybody else, in my opinion. And they included a little video graphic about Puka Nakua running that same drill all those years ago. And not comparing the two, but just something of note. They showed him running Puka Nakua running that drill all those years ago, and then it transformed into that same kind of drill being ran in the NFL with Puka Nakua and his drag routes and how he is very explosive after the catch, but also how he can find space very early. And Casey Conception like certainly creates those windows naturally. And while someone like Omar Cooper, wins through contact, Casey wins through space and can create open space as well. Again, if Kyle can manufacture touches for him and you can get him, I don't know, like running option routes underneath or stressing out linebackers, I think the sky's the limit for Casey Conception. Again, he won't give you that instant red zone upside because of his size. Again, not that he's like undersized at all, is 6 feet, but compared to someone like Boston or Chris Bell. However, he's more plug and play versatile, and ultimately, I wish he ran the 40. I think he probably would have tested in the 4.4s, potentially the 4.3s, but I was reading online that he's like a 4.4 flat guy. He didn't run it though. That's okay. Again, I wish he did. Ultimately, though, I do think that Casey Conception is the pick right there at pick number 27. And again, a guy that I came around on, there were some comments previously that I did check out. So now we traded Mac Jones for the 49th overall pick. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys right now that the pick here is Maxie Haneker because this is him, Malachi Lawrence, and Traydon Stukes are my three favorite players in this draft. Another player I would consider here is someone like Chase Basantis, who's a guard, who also had a very strong combine, especially his cone drill. Very fast, more athletic than I thought. Max though just has he has a very nasty kick step and he gets into place very fast. Again, if you guys didn't know, he has only been playing football for 2.5 years. Grew up playing soccer and basketball. I don't know about soccer. It's kind of interesting because the dude's 6'6", 330. Um, you don't see him lining up at guard, but he does have guard experience as well. And I think he has the better athletic profile than someone like Basantis. Max ran a 4.91 at the combine, so that is insane. If you transfer that by size to like a wide receiver, that's in the 4.3s. And again, massive frame. He's 6'6", 330. He has long arms too, and he just has great functional movement. I mean, he doesn't get forklifted backwards on any of his reps. That's one thing you notice with him at the Senior Bowl. Had a great performance there. There's a couple clips of him in game against Texas Tech against David Bailey where he honestly like kind of manhandles him. I think with Max though, the thing is he's a right tackle, so he could potentially compete with McKivitz. It's kind of on a case by case basis. Some fans think McKivitz is good, some fans don't. I am kind of neutral. I certainly think that he's definitely a better run blocker. I think that's fairly obvious. I wouldn't call him a liability in pass blocking, but I think he's a below average pass blocker. Colton McKivitz is. So I think Max would, be immediate swing tackle depth, and he could compete for a guard role potentially. But I think he has long term upside, and there's a couple great players here too. Like AJ Halsey is, I mean, looking at he has the ideal frame, and dude, he's a big hitter as well. I saw some tape on him. Um, Only letting up a 59 passer rating is awesome. The only thing about safety is it's a very deep class this year. I think safety and edge specifically. Also, wide receiver is growing on me. So Safety is a position I would attack later. And again, offensive line has been a problem for, I mean, this entire decade. Specifically the guard position, and again, counterintuitive because we're taking a tackle, but he could play guard. He does have experience. I think you just take Max because of his upside. I mean, this is a guy who originally was being mocked in like the fourth round not too long ago when I made my first video about a month ago, and now is working his way up into the mid second round. Could potentially push into the first round. I wouldn't be surprised at all. You look at big board rankings, he I think he was top 40 in both Daniel Jeremiah and I forget, Bucky Brooks, I believe. Anyways, though, he is the pick here. There are some interesting prospects like Keontae Scott, very solid prospect. I actually like him quite a lot, and he's growing on me, especially as potentially a boundary guy. D'Angelo Pons too. The only I really do love D'Angelo Pons. The only thing that's unfortunate is we found our nickel quarter our corner in um, Upton Stout, so it'd be hard to find a position where D'Angelo Pons could get playing time because you don't want him to be boundary or outside at 5'9", unfortunately. Not trying to uh, be one of those guys that downplays height, but because we already have, a smaller nickel corner, you definitely want more size as a boundary. Although he's one of my favorite corner prospects. Jeremy Bernard, also a sleeper combine. I do like him quite a bit. Anyways, though, Max will be the pick there at number 49. And man, I was gonna take Malachi Lawrence. Derek Moore will be the pick here though because he has the production. I mean, this guy is a game wrecker. You look at some of these metrics here: the pass rush grade 92.4, the run defense grade 76.3. Uh, if you guys don't know, true pass set pass rush grade for edges is probably the biggest predictive metric here on PFF in terms of any position. And his is at the very top of his class. The pass rush win rate is right at 20%. Um, I mean, you just look at the production and you can't, a little bit of a, not a, not necessarily a tweener. You would like him to maybe add on a little bit of weight, but again, he's a senior. He has plenty of experience, 3-year starter, and I mean he has like a compact, powerful build. Again, he's a Michigan guy, so he has experience in like that pro style NFL structured defense. I think he's a high end disruptor. He really showed it this year. I looked at some Twitter clips as well. I think he's really sound in the gap as well, and again, reliable in the run game. Um, could be someone that could set the edge too. I could immediately see him as like a rotational guy, a consistent rotational guy who could work his way into being a starter. Um, Also, one thing with him is you see his rip moves on tape a lot, which is kind of an underrated move in today's NFL, but he performs them really well, so that's another thing of note. I don't think he necessarily has elite bend. Malachi Lawrence is someone who also doesn't have elite bend, but I think he can leverage it more than someone like Derek Moore. Um, I don't think Derek Moore's first step is the fastest. It's sufficient though, and I think he's more of like a strong side edge than, a pure speed rusher, but that's fine. I actually think that's what we need more, especially alongside on the other side of Bosa. Uh, Joshua Josephs is another interesting prospect here. He is another game wrecker. However, I want to keep him in mind for another video, so I'm going to talk about him more in depth next time. Romello Height, also another great player. Again, this is the second round is where you can find a lot of these great edges. But Derek Moore is going to be the pick there. And in terms of our positional need, we have already addressed wide receiver and edge. And our next pick here is at 92. Zachariah Branch. Um, Again, we drafted a wide receiver. He's someone I talked about in my uh, draft targets videos, but I'm a little bit out on him now. Not fully. Kyle Lewis, very interesting because he is a linebacker who he's a speedy linebacker because of his build, but he could potentially be moved to safety for sure. He could be like that hybrid guy. I do have someone in mind though. Antonio Williams, also a great slot wide receiver. The player I have in mind here though is Zakee Wheatley, and it's very interesting. I kind of held an ignorant view on Zakee Wheatley. I mentioned it in one of my earlier videos that I don't like him because he's a Penn State safety, which in hindsight is really like stupid. Um, because of Jair Brown, of course, totally different players though. Anyways, looking at his metrics, 84 coverage grade and 83 run defense grade. He's sufficient in both. And again, for the 49ers, Jair Brown has regressed every single year. He was never the best coverage guy. He kind of came out of college touted as a ball hawk, and he has regressed as a run stopper as well. Um, Zakee Wheatley is a better coverage defender coming out of college, and if we did release Jair Brown, I like Marquise Siegel, but he is potentially even more of a liability in coverage, which isn't a good thing. The thing about Zakee Wheatley is I'm really surprised he didn't run at the combine. I think he would have ran in the 4.4s for sure. He's very speedy. He in the drills that he did do though, he was top five in both. I think he did the broad jump. Performed quite well in that. But he's a long rangey safety. You look at his size, he's 6'2", 202. That is a very solid size. And I think the thing with him too is, you think about Penn State, they deploy split safety. I mean, you look at the alignment. They deploy their split safety looks a lot. And he was very comfortable in that. So I think combining Zakee Wheatley, someone who is very sufficient in coverage, with someone like Malik Mustafa, who is okay in coverage but a better run defender, is something that the 49ers really need to look into. Again, I mentioned how the um, safety class is deep, and for sure it is. I honestly like all these prospects. Zakee Wheatley, Genesis Smith, Bud Clark, Michael Tafe. I like Bishop Fitzgerald towards the end. Lorenzo Styles had a really good combine. Um, Xavier out of Iowa also had a really solid combine. I think Zakee Wheatley, though, and I looked into him after a comment on a previous video, he is just such a rangy defender, and he has like that sideline to sideline burst. Again, he's so quick so that when he diagnoses a play correctly, he can get there really fast. He's not passive. He's aggressive, and he'll be a special teams guy too. He contributed greatly to special teams at Penn State, and I mean this might garner some discourse in the comments because I am passing on Kalen Rutledge, who is a great guard. I love him. I think he's one of the better guards. Again, above average. I mean, top percentile metrics and everything here. Has only led up 2 sacks in the last 3 years. However, I really do like Zakee Wheatley, and he's grown on me. I think at this point in the draft, regardless of how deep the safety position is, finding a guy with this range and these physical traits this late, not this late, I mean, we're only in the third round, but at this point in the draft is kind of surprising. So he's going to be the pick there. However, if we did go with Kalen Rutledge, I wouldn't be mad at all. One thing you guys might notice is that I do try to take different players. I have picked Max a couple times, but Kalen Rutledge, I've mocked him in most of my mock drafts, so that's the one of the only reasons why I'm not picking him there. And now we move on to pick number 127. So, this is interesting. Austin Barber, I would take him here. I think Austin Barber is getting very underrated by this ADP, though. I honestly think he's a third round guy. Nicholas Singleton, interesting player because he is someone who kind of had a little bit of a down year. Not a huge down year, but Chris McClellan, a solid prospect from Missouri there. I think at this point, defensive line is a position I would attack. It's interesting because Albert Regis, when we think about the 49ers defensive line, we obviously have the young core, Alfred Collins and CJ West. And I don't think either of them are particularly good at pass rushing. Um, I think Alfred Collins a better run stopper, and I think CJ West is a better pass rusher than Alfred Collins, but neither of them are particularly good at pass rushing. Albert Regis is interesting because he had a very good combine, a sleeper combine, one of the best defensive linemen in the entire thing. I think in every single event that he performed, he was top five. I saw a little twit longer about that on Twitter. The only thing is the pass rush is a little bit concerning. So while he does have that physical profile, again, he is a little bit of a tweener. That is what leads me to go with Chris McClellan here, who does have the kind of consistent sack production, a little bit of a better pass rusher as well. Great pass rush win rate, 10% as a defensive line is solid. And this is the one pick in this draft that's a little bit of a dark dart throw, but you like the size on him, 6'4", 323. He participated in a couple events at the combine. Again, Albert Regis kind of was one of the better defensive linemen in general, so had a better performance than Chris McClellan. But that's the one thing about defensive linemen is it's always good when they participate because while they are exceptional top tier athletes, more athletic than 99% of the population, if you don't have a particularly good combine as a defensive lineman, especially if you're already projected to be a middle late round guy, it's not going to affect you too much. And it's not like Chris had a bad combine. Anyways, though, I think you kind of lean towards the production there. Caleb Proctor is an interesting player because, of course, he plays at southeastern Louisiana, which is lesser competition. And I don't want to make that argument. I mean, a couple of videos ago, I mentioned Ted Hurst. He plays in Sun Belt as a wide receiver, but at the same time, there's a couple wide receivers out of the Sun Belt who have gone on to have good NFL years. I mean, T.Y. Hilton is one. Um, Tez Johnson recently. I think he originally played at Troy. So he could certainly become something. And I mean, he's shown to be an elite pass rusher. Um, it's just at round four, you want to take someone I think who has faced better competition, even like Power Five as well. Anyways, Chris McClellan will be the pick there, and now we are on to pick 133. We are kind of at that weird spot where there's a lot of tight ends and quarterbacks. I still hold the view that the 49ers, in terms of immediate positions of need, we won't need a tight end because I think George Kittle will be back earlier than later. But if not, Jake Tonjes showed that he can fill that position in. Halfback is an interesting position. We already took a brief look at Singleton, but of course Kyle Shanahan loves his running backs. Claiborne is, I don't know. I mentioned in a previous video that I don't think he particularly does one thing extraordinarily well. Um, I think he is efficient in everything, or he's good at most everything. I guess the one thing that trumps everything is he kicks a lot of his runs out, uh, I guess a good trait to have. And then Mike Washington, who had the killer combine, I mean, ran a 4.3. That's definitely going to shoot him up. And he does have the receiving work. Jamari Taylor is interesting because he uh, he's shorter, 5'9", and he gets a lot of receiving work. I mean, 54 targets, leading to only 250 yards is a little bit iffy, but he has shown to be valuable in the passing game. I don't think they go running back here though, so we go down the board a little bit. DJ Campbell, kind of an interesting prospect. However, I don't like him very much even at this point of the draft, and I think I'm going to go with a second wide receiver here. It's interesting because we already have a bunch of young wide receivers. I mean, not a bunch. We have two, Jacob Cowling and Jordan Watkins. Of course, Jacob Cowling is our speedster that we hope can get on the field. Has faced a couple injuries, and Jordan Watkins is kind of in the doghouse, um, a field stretcher as well. Kevin Coleman, though, I really like because he's specifically a slot guy. He is awesome in the slot, and he's 5'11", 180, but you look at the contested catch rate, 81% for that size is awesome. Um, again, like it's 80% of his work is done in the slot. I could for sure see him getting a roll over 2 yards per route run. And I mean, you looked at this guy in the Senior Bowl. He had a great Senior Bowl performance. Was going up against the Ohio State corner Davidson. Played really, really well in that. And another, we have Eric McAllister right after him, who had the production. He had, I mean, 1,100 yards, nothing to scoff at. He's like more of the field stretcher of the two. You see his deep yards, depth of target over 12. I think that Kevin Coleman, though, can, like in terms of a Shanahan system, can offer you more offensive diversity. Again, you already have, I mean, assuming that you go for kind of a possession receiver, either re-signing Jawan Jennings or I don't think that we'll re-sign Jawan Jennings, but Mike Evans, potentially we grab him. He, a bigger bodied receiver. If we get Kevin Coleman, we could add that suddenness. He has, again, like that quick twitch. Um, he also, I believe, returned on special teams. I could be wrong. But yeah, him like Casey Conception, they are kind of similar. They do have, the separation consistency. Um, but I really think he could potentially break out as a wide receiver four. You could deploy him on like third down packages as well. And, in 11 personnel, he could be an awesome addition there. Um, at this rate, I believe that we miss out on. See, I didn't realize that Bryce Lance was on the board right now. Actually, I'm going to. I mean, I gave many reasons as to why I'm going to draft Kevin Coleman there. I'm changing it, and I'm going to draft Bryce Lance. I mean, this guy had an amazing combine. He might shoot up after this, but I think you can get him at the round four. He could go round three, but there's a lot of receivers that played better competition. And again, Bryce Lance is specifically a deep threat guy. He ran like a blazing 4.34 at the combine. Yards per out run is 3.58, the highest in the class because he's such a deep ball guy. 21.2 yards per reception. Again, I love Kevin Coleman, but in terms of a field stretcher, um, again, 6'3", 209, solid size. Trey Lance's brother, interesting. But you go for the upside here. I mean, it is honestly uncanny. His combine comparison is Christian Watson. They are like similar in many ways. And I mean, Christian Watson came back and had a great season. Yeah, we're gonna go with Bryce Lance there. As much as I talked about Kevin Coleman, being the separation guy, because we already have kind of addressed that with Casey Conception, we grab Bryce Lance there, and I don't think we look back. And now we go for Bo Stevens here. We already grabbed Max earlier as a tackle. Now we go for guard, which is arguably a bigger need on the offensive line. And I mean, you know what they say about Iowa offensive linemen? You just draft them. Um, it is weird. I think that he is a bit of a better run blocker than pass blocker. I kind of disagree with that metric in this case. But you think about Iowa, right? They're gonna, they have that solid system in place there. He's gonna be very scheme disciplined. He's gonna be a technical run blocker. I mean, has a strong base. You look at his size, 6'5", 315. Again, because he's from Iowa, he's gonna understand like timing, second level, getting up to the second level. And you layer your offensive lineman, one early with Max, one late with Bo. This isn't going to be like the flashy pick, but again, we are in the fourth round here. Uh, but he's someone who can, make your offensive line stable. And I mean, with Burford gone, it's hard to say he could be a plug and play player, being that he's in the fourth round. But at the same time, you could say that. You could certainly say that. So Bo Stevens will be the pick there. And now we go on to our last pick. Again, at this point, we look at some of our picks. We've addressed all of our big positional needs. Of course, we grabbed two wide receivers, two different archetypes. We have our separator and Conception and our space guy, and our field stretcher and Bryce Lance. We grabbed our two offensive linemen, one tackle, one guard. We grabbed our two defensive linemen. We grabbed our secondary. And here, I mentioned Caleb Proctor, who could be interesting. Um, Again, I don't know. As much as I do like him, and you do see the production, I hate to be that guy that talks about the competition, but I wouldn't take him there. Miles Kitselman is interesting. I mean, he had honestly a pretty bad combine. Not that I don't think it knocks him down a ton, but just something of note. At this point, Jaden Roberts is interesting in that he's a great pass blocker, as you see. However, I don't think you take three offensive linemen in the same draft. I think at this point I'm leaning towards taking, and I don't even think it's a dart throw. He had a great combine. Both Washington corners had a great combine, both Decario and Prisick. The thing with Decario, right, is he was projected to be a first round pick in last year's draft. And I mean, you look at the size, 6'4", 200. At this point in the draft, in the fifth round, um, he's long, man. He has that press body type, and you can't teach this late in the, like, you don't find players with this size this late in the draft, and that alone gives him huge developmental upside. And I mean, a bit of a down year too. He only let up a 50 passer rating, which is extremely solid. His man coverage grade is not what you want it to be. But again, a big down year here. But he has shown to be an elite corner. Again, projected first round pick. And you think about the current state of the 49ers cornerbacks, right? Renardo Green could potentially get traded. Uh, I think he will stay on the team, but he had massive problems, especially in zone coverage. But in terms of boundary corner, Renardo Green is that, and Tacario Davis could challenge him. Um, he could potentially challenge him for a starting position right away. And in terms of, a substitutional cornerback, Darrell Luter, he is fine on special teams, but I don't want to see him subbing in as a corner. So Tacario Davis could get snaps that way. I think he lacks a little bit of recovery speed. However, again, you can't teach this length this late in the draft. And day three, you're betting on traits a lot of the time. And if he hits, that would be great. You get outside corner depth on a cheap rookie contract. If he doesn't, it's like minimal cost. Of course, a fifth round pick is valuable, but it's not so valuable. Yeah, ultimately, boils down, in my opinion, to gambling on tools, and he has that NFL caliber length. He's shown to have been an elite corner. Um, I forget what he ran at the combine. I think he ran. I might be getting him confused with Prisock, but I think he ran a 4.41, pretty much a 4 flat, which, again, at this, yeah, he ran a 4.41, had a great broad jump as well. Ultimately, Takario Davis is the pick there. And again, you can make an argument of building up the offensive line or defensive line because corner isn't necessarily an immediate need. But with our last pick there, again, a day 3 pick, I think you are betting on the traits. So we'll wait to see what they grade this draft out. And I'm honestly fairly surprised. They usually give me a worse rating. Again, we cover every position as best as possible. I might have preferred to grab Malachi Lawrence here instead of Derek Moore. I totally understand grabbing Kalen Rutledge over Zakee Wheatley. However, he is someone who is quickly growing on me as a like mid-round hidden gem. Again, his range is great. I mean, an aggressive safety as well. I think he might be the perfect complement for Malik Mustafa. Chris McLennan is again didn't have the best combine performance. He does have the production as a pass rushing defensive lineman. Maybe the dart throw of this entire draft here. I guess you could say the same thing about Bryce Lance. Um, but man, again, Bryce Lance like really put on a show at the combine and had the production at North Dakota State, albeit was kind of a one-trick pony. However, he does have a little bit of more of a route tree than some people uh, like. Than I don't know. It's weird. I think he has a better route tree than people expect. However, at the end of the day, he is going to be kind of your field stretcher. I think Bo Stevens would be kind of a steal in round 4 to solidify the offensive line. And of course, finishing it with Takario Davis, gambling on those traits there. And Takario Davis could make his way into round 4 as well. If not him, Devon Marshall is potentially a corner we could take in the later rounds as well. Anyways, though, that is going to conclude this video. I any comments are greatly appreciated. A lot of names you guys leave me any names you want me to check out because I have checked them out. That's why I am high on Casey Conception now. That's why I checked out Zakee Wheatley. Um, and yeah, I am going to get back to my normal posting schedule. I just don't want to overwhelm you guys with too many mock drafts. I think I'm going to do some sort of fixing the 49ers, an extended or a part 2 of that, because, Kyle Pitts got franchise tagged, and now that we're kind of further into the offseason, I might recreate that video fairly soon. But again, thank you very much for the support. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you enjoyed the combine. If you did, tune in. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching.